Hey, so in this video I want to talk about the criminal justice system, criminal justice reform, the idea of defunding the police, and I even saw a sign in one of the pictures of these protests that said defund the Department of Corrections or prisons. And I think that's the last thing you want to do. When I was living in San Francisco, I worked for an agency that one of my jobs was to go be a part of the crisis intervention training for the San Francisco Police Department. Part of my job was to go there and talk to them about my life experience as having mental illnesses and having had to deal with the police as someone who's got mental illness and ways that they could be more successful in dealing with other people who have mental illness. There were also people with more severe mental illness than mine that talked about, schizophrenia and whatnot, talked about how they, if they're in a schizophrenic state, they may not be able to follow directions. They may not even really hear them. There's all kinds of reasons why, I guess you would say medically, people can't respond properly. And police don't know that. They just show up at a scene and they see somebody that's acting irrationally. So part of my job was to go there and talk to the police on how to handle stressful encounters better. And de-escalation was a huge part of the whole thing. Whether you're literally talking somebody off of a bridge or just trying to talk them out of hurting themselves in some other way, or, whatever. You need de-escalation skills. The best part of that job, though, was when I got to go to the awards ceremony and give police officers awards who were successfully used their CIT skills, and some of them even saved lives, saved people from suicide. That was the absolute best part of that. But cops need more training, not less. And if you defund the police, they'll get less training. That's going to be the first thing that goes out the window, is any training. They need more training. They need to train rigorously. I think they should have physical fitness standards. They should have to be able to, achieve certain things physically. I think they should have to pass personality tests. I don't think policing should be a job that you can just go apply and go to school for a couple of weeks and then go out on the streets and start being a cop. That's the last thing we want. We want to invest more money in our police to make them more effective and make it so they're trained to be less likely to use force. So if you're in favor of less police brutality, then you need to be in favor of more police funding. There's just no two ways about that. That's just the way it has to be. And same thing with the prison system. Defund the Department of Corrections is, if you care about prisoners, that is the absolute last thing you want to do, because it's going to hurt them the most. They're going to cut their food budget. They're going to cut all kinds of any programming that a prison might have to try and help a prisoner better themselves in some way. All that's going to go. And pretty much everywhere it's all gone already anyway, with budget cuts coming all the way from, I think I want to say starting in the 90s, probably under Bill Clinton. Or maybe there was budget cuts going on before that, and I just know about it because the mid-90s is when I happened to have been in prison and saw programs being cut left and right. You want your prisoners to keep themselves active and have opportunities to better themselves. You want them to be able to have schooling, training, give them vocational training, give them college classes, give them everything they need, give them therapy, give them group therapy sessions, everything that they could possibly need to make them a better person for when they get out of prison. And we need to make it easier for them coming out of prison too. Some places give you nothing, other places give you a few dollars and a bus ticket. Then what are you supposed to do? You don't have any money, you don't have a job, sometimes you don't really have a place to live. You know, there's a lot of prisoners that get out because they say they're going to be living somewhere, and they're just saying that so that they can get out because they don't actually have somewhere to stay. And the best that their friends will do for them is say, yeah, you can pretend to live here. So I think it should be, halfway houses should be mandatory when you get out of prison, because you need that time to transition. It's a place for the person to live while they're getting used to being back in society. They can look for a job, and they can get that job. And once they've had a job for a month and are starting to get paychecks and have had a chance to put a little aside so they can maybe get an apartment, then they should be able to get out of there. But they shouldn't be able to get out of the halfway house until they've accomplished those things. That's the best way to put productive citizens back into society. Having them just sit around playing cards all day, telling war stories, learning how to be better criminals, that's not the way to do it. You take their funding and all those programs go away. Like I said, when I was in prison in the mid-90s, schooling was being cut. They cut the GED program, which I think they should have never cut that. That was just as important, if not more important, than the college classes they offered. They cut different vocational jobs that they had, the ones that actually paid a decent wage instead of just $15 a month. Yeah, that $15 per month is what, in Illinois, in the 90s, is what working a 40-hour week got you. But they need to make, and obviously there's prisoners that are never going to be productive members of society, and they do need to be let out at some point. We can't keep them locked away forever, unless they deserve to be locked away forever. But there's ones that are never going to get out, or they're never going to better themselves, but we still have to try. We can't let those possible failures prevent us from doing the right thing for everybody else. Yeah, they cut a lot of programs. They cut art programs. They cut the college funding was cut so that you could still go to college classes, but if you earned a degree, you had to pay for the entire course of schooling. Once you were released from prison, you would get, you know, a bill, like a student loan type of a deal that you would have to pay back. So that didn't completely take it away. If you didn't get a degree, you could still go to college classes for free. They had an automotive program, but they cut that back so that there were less students. And probably a lot of other things that I wasn't even aware of, because I wasn't there for that long. So I didn't get to see a whole lot of changes, but things were really changing, and not for the better. For anybody who's, you know, the type of person who believes if you go to prison, you just need to be punished, and, you know, as they say, big rocks to little rocks kind of thing, then you would be happy with the cuts, because then there weren't as many fun things or productive things to do. And another thing, if you give inmates better privileges and better programming, they tend to stay out of trouble because they don't want to jeopardize their place in that position or programming. So it's incentive for them to behave themselves while they're locked up too. So it's important that we keep the funding going, and don't even get me started on private prisons. Private prisons need to be gone. We need to do away with them, and the government needs to be the ones in charge of our departments of correction. When you need new prisons, they need to be built. None of this shuffling prisoners around from state to state. Like back in the 90s, prisoners from Wisconsin were being sent to Oklahoma or something like that because they were overcrowded in Wisconsin and they had the room in Oklahoma. Doing something like that, okay, you never know where you're going to go to prison at. You don't get to just necessarily go to prison at the place that's closest to your home. A lot of times you're half the state away or not, or more from where you live, and so it becomes very difficult for your family to come and visit you. Now you move that person to a completely several states away, they're never going to have any visitors. And keeping that connection between family members and the inmates is vitally important too. They need to feel connected to their families and to societies, and their families need to feel connected to them. You're less likely to be an angry thug if you're feeling loved by the people in your life. It's another incentive to stay well behaved because you can lose your visiting privileges if you don't. If you don't have visitors, what does that matter? And speaking of keeping connection with your family, the one thing I hate the most about the prison system right now is the phone system. It's obscenely expensive to make a phone call. When I was doing my time in and out of jail, just calling in the same town, when I would be in jail calling across town, it would cost $20 for 15 minutes. And 15 minutes goes really fast. Now, that hurts the prisoners and their families. It's hitting their families in the pocketbook. And their families didn't do anything to deserve that. So if I want to talk to my loved one who happens to be in prison, I have to fork out $20 for 15 minutes, or I have to send them money so they can put it on a phone card or whatever, put it in their commissary to be able to make phone calls. I understand long distance, even though now there's really no such thing as long distance fees. But I can understand if it was long distance, have it be regular long distance charges, like maybe 50 cents or $1 a minute, you know. Now that's way too much too. That's ridiculous. I don't even know what long distance charges are, if they even apply anymore. Anyway, $15 to $20 a phone call becomes exorbitant for people. Is that the right word? I hope I use that word right. It's out of reach for a lot of people. There's a rap song I listen to where he says, you're calling home, but the recorder keeps repeating there's a block on the phone because people haven't been able to pay the bill because it's so high. So the phone company puts a block on, so you can't even try and call them anymore. It just says this number is unavailable or something like that. Yeah, I spent 2 or 3 months in jail, and because I have mental health issues and being in jail doesn't help my mental health issues, I am on the phone quite a bit. And we had I want to say around a $1,500 phone bill at one point. It took forever to get that worked off, but until it was completely paid off, I couldn't make any more phone calls. I used up too many too fast. And for someone whose mental health depends on being able to remain connected to their loved ones, that's way too much money. It's just way too much money. Anyway, I've been rambling on for almost 15 minutes now, so I'm going to cut this one to a close. I just think we need more funding for the police. They need more training. They need more de-escalation. They need to, do more training on the range. They need to do more training on the mat. They just need more training all around. The prison systems need more funding so that we're putting out better people than we're putting in. And the things like the phone system and things like that just need to be changed. It just needs to be changed. Charge a fee, but don't be ridiculous. Don't be ridiculous. And they're being ridiculous. Anyway, that's all I got to say on that for right now.